Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Philadelphia. I'm Char Nolan, one of the chef instructors here at Rouxbe, and I am so excited about today because we get to talk about Plantsgiving and other beautiful dishes and recipes. And I have received some wonderful questions from everyone. But before we jump into the holiday guide, I did want to talk about a couple of things that pertain to your actual work as a student at Rouxbe. And one of them, of course, you always hear me talk about photos. Remember that good lighting is the best way to take a photo. And if you have done your assignment at night and you want to get some good lighting, pack it up and put it in the refrigerator. And then the next day, wherever the best light is in your house, when I was a student, I took my photos on the patio in 23-degree weather, but the lighting was perfect. And I wanted to make sure that my photo reflected the amount of work that I put into the assignment. That's the first one. And the second thing is so many students write, I burned my carrots, or my carrots were undercooked. And I always write, do you have an oven thermometer? So for about $4 or $5, you can get an oven thermometer. You can hang it on your inside the stove, and it will give you an accurate readout of what the internal temperature of your oven is. Your external temperature might say 400 degrees, and this might read 350. So sometimes there are incongruities in your oven temperature, so you want to have that checked out. But an oven thermometer is a great way to understand how your oven heats and the impact it has on your finished product. So hope that helps. The other thing is, and we'll go through the questions in a little bit, but if you don't have an oven thermometer, because I do a lot of teaching on the outside in the community, in people's homes, in schools, and etc., maintaining an accurate temperature for me is always critical. So I have a laser thermometer, and it can read, you just point it, a little laser reads the temperature, and this way I know that I have maintained the temperature of foods that I might be taking to a teaching event, a barbecue, a home party, or whatever, because accurate temperature is very important. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later when we talk about ways to have a successful yeast bread recipe. So with that, we're going to start with, our first question comes from Dan Marek. And a funny story about Dan and I is that Dan and I both worked at Whole Foods Market. He in Austin, Texas, I in Devon, Pennsylvania. And we met at the very first immersion that Rip Esselstyn had in March of 2010. And he was doing demos and showing people how to cook. And I always remembered him. And we had a program that was called Health Starts Here. And most of the recipes were developed, in fact, by Chef Dan Marek. So we can easily say that we go way back. And his first question is, October was cookbook month. What plant-based cookbook would you recommend to people? So I have two, and it should be no surprise. This was my very first plant-based cookbook. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea who Rip Esselstyn was, but shortly after getting the book, I saw him on CBS This Morning with Tracy Smith, and he did a wonderful 10-minute TV spot explaining everything about being plant-based. And getting this book was one of the prerequisites for going to the immersion. I've had it for 15 years. It's worn. Everything I know about plant-based cooking without using oil or salt is from this book. So I love it dearly. It's autographed by every member of the Esselstyn family, and it's just a very wonderful book. Easy to read, simple recipes, and you can tell that it's an older cookbook because it doesn't say plant milk, it says non-dairy milk. So back in the day, before there was the abundance of now plant milks in the world, people used the term non-dairy milk. The other one, and actually this book is just very dear to me because it has about 125 recipes in it, all created by Ann Esselstyn. And some of these recipes are 35 years old. because you know that Dr. Esselstyn and Ann Esselstyn were pioneers in this entire movement of whole food plant-based, no oil, salt, or sugar. So I love the book. The first thing I ever made in it was Ann's the walnut sauce from Casa de Luz in Austin, Texas. It's a great recipe. There are no photos, but the recipes are really, really good. So that's my answer to Dan's questions. And it's kind of interesting because Dan and I all go way back with all of the Esselstyns. So thanks for your great question, Dan, and I'll see you soon. So this next question comes from Penny. Hi, Penny. How are you? Penny has a question about wanting to make her own yogurt. And you will find in the roster here that I did submit an article from Food and Wine about the best yogurt makers. However, if you go down a make your own yogurt rabbit hole, there are so many suggestions and so many ways to start your own yogurt. The most important thing is using a plant-based milk, and this happens to be from Elmhurst, and it is a milked oats, and the only ingredients in it are water, oats, and salt. You can't use a plant-based milk that has guar gum and lots of other words that you can't pronounce because it's not clean enough to make the yogurt. So this milk, the funny part about Elmhurst Dairy is that I grew up in Queens, New York, and Elmhurst Dairy was a milk delivery that came to our neighborhood. And the interesting thing is the company went away, but the children in the family business decided to take the Elmhurst name and make it into a plant milk business. So this is a shelf-stable milk. I like it a lot. I'd buy it when it's on sale. So next to starting with a very good milk, you really don't need to have any fancy starters because you can use a good Greek yogurt. The yogurt must be plain. The yogurt must be unsweetened. And there are many, many recipes that will give you the exact, portions to use. I like to use 4 tablespoons of this Greek yogurt to about a quart of this. And you're going to heat it in your stove. And I just put it in the oven with the light on, and somehow it really works. I did buy a yogurt maker last year, and I didn't like it. It came out too soupy. When I make it in the oven with this thick Kite Hill Greek yogurt, it comes out beautifully. If you want to have a thicker yogurt, and I prefer a thicker yogurt, I'll add about a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of agar, and that naturally thickens it a little bit without compromising its ingredients, so forth and so on. So a natural plant-based milk that has no fancy schmancy ingredients and does not contain sugar, and a very good quality unsweetened plant-based yogurt, and I think you're good to go. Check out the article. You might want to go to a store like Williams-Sonoma or any other kind of kitchenware store. If you live in or near Philadelphia, I highly recommend going to Fonte's, the oldest kitchen store in America, founded in about 1908. And it is a place that Chef Fran and I love to go to and shop. So that's yogurt. So thank you for sending that in. That was a really good question, Penny. I really appreciate it. Excuse me. So Libby has been making bread, and she's having a couple of issues in making the bread and it not rising. So, excuse me, there are so many different ways to make bread. And I'm not an experienced bread maker, but I use a recipe called Alaska bread that requires no kneading. You keep it in a Dutch oven for 18 hours to rise, and then you bake it at 425 degrees. Google Alaska bread. You always will have successful bread. It looks like it came out of a fancy French bakery. But to your point, I would encourage you, before you even buy buy yeast, to look at the date to make sure that it's not outdated. I would also look at the type of yeast you are using. I would look at the temperature of the water, and that is where having a temperature gun or a chef's thermometer comes in handy. And some of the other things is that if you are adding salt to your recipe, you should not pour it directly into the yeast, but rather circulate it throughout the entire. Either you're putting it into I would suggest to put it into your flour. Those are some basics. Always check the date of the yeast. I have sometimes come home with great anticipation to make the most beautiful loaf of bread, and to only see that I wasn't diligent enough at the grocery store to find a well-dated yeast. So that should work out well for starters, and good luck with your bread making. So Kelly, this is the best question. Kelly wants to know about, are there any oil-free tortillas? So I'm going to say tortilla wraps, the bigger ones. So I'm going to say this. Invest about $10 or $15 to buy a tortilla press, and you can use your favorite corn flour or your favorite wheat flour, and you do not need to have oil to make them. I prefer to make a cup of mashed sweet potatoes with a cup of flour, and you can mix flours, and you mix them into a ball and put it in the refrigerator, and then cut it into fours, roll it into balls, put it through your tortilla press, and you will have the best tortillas, and they'll be so good that you won't want to buy anything that has been pre-manufactured. It is, you could use Ezekiel makes a tortilla, and those are good. They're sometimes difficult to wrap. I suggest putting them under the faucet and watering them, and then either putting them into the oven for a few minutes so they become more pliable. I think that Ezekiel are the only ones that are not filled with oil. So those are my recommendations. I hope that they help, and let us know what you decide to do. And if you make them, we want to hear back from you. Thanks so much for the great question. So this is from Robert K. Hi, Robert. How are you today? Robert wants to know if there are what other uses there are for aquafaba in substituting eggs. That is always the best question. Aquafaba works just about everywhere, whether you're making plant-based meatballs, or you're making a lentil loaf, or you're making anything where you want things to stick together. Instead of using flax meal, you can use the aquafaba. I personally like to whip it up a little bit. I have made a stiff aquafaba and then used it to make the tunaless salad that we have in our curriculum. And it adds a whole different texture. The flavor is still good, so you might want to try that. I say be one who experiments in their own kitchen to enjoy learning new things firsthand, because sometimes that's the best way to learn a new technique. And if I think you know that you can always come here or always ask one of our other instructors about something, but I suggest to try the tunaless salad, and you'll see a huge difference. It'll taste really, really good. So thanks for sending in that question, Robert. We really appreciate it. And I think we saved the best to last. I'm going to say that. So we have some exciting news here at Rouxbe. And, I'm really fortunate that I get to work with a very talented, fun, and creative crew of people. And I believe it was over the summer, we put together our heads to create this wonderful Plantsgiving guide that is chock full of delicious recipes. And when you read the recipes, you'll be able to see, oh, Chef Dan made that, or oh, that was made by Chef Char, or whomever. So the recipes are fun. They're tried and true. If you see my name after a recipe, you will know that it is whole food, plant-based, no oil, no salt or sugar. So what I did was I took a couple of the recipes because I thought that you might like to see what they look like. And if this is your first departure from having a Thanksgiving and you're moving into the plant domain, I wanted to show you a few things. So the first thing is we have a great recipe for cranberry sauce. And it's made with whole cranberries and date paste, and it's got oranges in it. I think I threw some pineapple in here just because I had some pineapple and I didn't want it to go to waste. When you put all of it into your high-speed blender, when it finishes, you're going to say to yourself, oh my goodness, did I make a cranberry smoothie? Because as you know, cranberries are a high water volume fruit. And so you're shaking your head saying, I'm just going to run and get some ocean spray. No one will know, like the commercial says. So here it is today. I made this last night, and now you can see that it has a gorgeous texture, and it isn't runny like a Slurpee. And by the way, if you don't have these dishes in your house, I'm not sure. I've had them for years. They come with a plastic top, so you can almost make them in serving dishes, and it's one less thing that you have to do. And I'm going to garnish this, and then I'm going to share with you probably one of the most effective things that you can do for planning your Thanksgiving dinner. So for a garnish, I have some orange zest. And I use a large zester for this, so it gives it a little appeal. And then for extra look, I'm just going to throw on some thyme. And it's going to look really pretty when you serve it. And everybody's going to say, oh my gosh, I want this recipe. So it's delicious. It takes, and I'm not kidding, 5 minutes to make. So you can make it 5 days in advance. It'll stay well in your refrigerator. Make sure that you put it in the back of the fridge, that it's got a top on it. You're going to love it. I was at the grocery store early this morning, and a can of organic cranberry sauce. It was a 14-ounce can, was $4.29. So I think this is maybe a $1.99 dish, and everyone will love it. So you can share that with people. The other thing is, if you have people coming to your house who are expecting to see perhaps a piece of meat or something on the table, it's really easy to flip recipes that you like, to leave out things, put extra things in. I suggest getting some extra sage into your house, some poultry seasoning. But this is a quick and easy recipe for stuffing. And I used pumpernickel bread. I made it from scratch. I used pumpernickel bread, and I used a whole wheat bread, and then I toasted them in the oven. And you can see the recipe in the guide. I may have deviated a little bit by adding, 14 pounds of poultry seasoning or whatever. And I added some almonds. I would suggest to toast them so that there's a little bit more texture and a little more flavor. And I've got some rosemary on it. So on Thanksgiving Day, I'm going to put some of the mushroom gravy that we have in the guide, pour it on top, cover this, and cook it. So you're saying to yourself, is that all the stuffing she made for 7 people? No, I don't like cold stuffing. So I make 3 little ones. I bring the first one out to the table. Everybody eats it. Oh my gosh, this is so good. And then, is there more stuffing? You go into the kitchen and you bring out a piping hot pan of stuffing. So the leftover, if there's one pan left over, it looks delicious. It has maintained its beauty. And I don't think that we have it in the book, but one of the things that I like to do with leftovers, stay with me, is take some stuffing, make waffles out of it, and then take some leftover seitan, some leftover stuffing, cranberry sauce, and make a turkey sandwich. Because here in Pennsylvania, there's a thing called, oh gosh, it's called a turkey something at the Wawa, and I'm sure you've all heard of the Wawa. People go wild for this sandwich. So it's a good way to practice good full food utilization with the stuffing and then make some beautiful, delicious sandwiches. Now, there is a quick recipe for a seitan roast in the guide, which is my personal recipe, which I love. Sometimes, if you have not taken if you have not made the seitan recipe that is in the curriculum, making seitan may seem foreign to you. However, the recipe that is in the guide is quick and easy to make. But when you go to the grocery store, you're going to look for gluten flour. It says vital wheat gluten flour. In other words, it's saying seitan. So I love this brand the best. It's quick and easy to use. I trust everything that an employee-owned company like Bob's Red Mill uses. So this is what you're going to look for. in places like Mom's Organic Market or Sprouts or Whole Foods Market. You're going to find it in generally the baking section. So that should be helpful. The recipe is really good, has a nice texture. Slather on some of that mushroom gravy and a little bit of cranberry sauce not too far away, and it's going to be really good. I would suggest before next Thursday that if you're going to make it, to make a test recipe for yourself to make sure that you feel confident in making it and it comes out the way that you like it. Now, last but not least, well, two things, not last but not least. It's in the trade, it's called flipping a recipe. This dish was my father's most famous dish, and it was sliced, cooked sweet potatoes, and then it was layered with Granny Smith apples, and I'll use it in my father's voice, marshmallows. My father grew up in Bayside, New York. And on top of it, you're going to see marshmallows. And then this will get baked in the oven, and these get beautifully caramelized. And then the dish takes on a beautiful aroma and is delicious to eat. But you have to use vegan marshmallows. You can get vegan marshmallows at Trader Joe's. They have two different flavors. They have maple, and then they have plain vanilla. And if you're shopping at a conventional grocery store where they're also carried, they go by the name of Dandies, and they are completely 100% vegan. So this was a childhood favorite, but it was loaded with sugar and butter, and you don't need any of that to maintain the vegan or plant-based integrity of the dish. And it's kind of fun having things that are part of your own history that you have been able to convert into being plant-based. And I think that when you go through the guide, you're going to see some of those talking points about, creating family traditions or using family traditions that you have carried on for a long, long time. Lastly, and I do love to talk about plants and the proper temperature. So let's get this open. So you're saying to yourself, what in the world is this? So Thursday, I have a big event for 15 senior citizens where I am in the process of making a whole food plant-based, no oil Thanksgiving. And there are people who have come to my classes for 9 years. And they have made some wonderful adaptations into their own diet, which always makes me feel very happy. When I leave my house, I look as though I am going out west in a chuck wagon. So this is, I don't even know where I got this, but I have to show it to you because if I'm going to take something hot with me, I'm going to fill this with hot water. And then when it's time to leave, empty it out and put the hot food in here. Close the top. And then when I get to my destination, it's one less thing that I have to reheat. And it's a proper temperature, especially for older adults who generally like their food to be a little warmer or less warm than it would be if you were serving it. And one last thing, I promise this time. So here we go. I have a friend who is a potter, and she made me some dishes that say plants on them. So if I am going to someone's house and I don't want to look like, oh, here comes that plant-based weirdo again, I will make a double dish of something. So for example, I might make a double dish of the cranberry sauce and put it in here, and everyone knows that it's plant-based, but it will be the first dish to go. So I think that that is all. I do have there's a great article in Veg News magazine if you want to learn more about the contents of the guide. I highly recommend it. They say nowadays that you should not give things to people, but rather experiences. So I think this is the perfect dish. And I'll tell you this now, that when you see the photos of the seitan, that dish is plated on my grandmother's china. So a lot of the instructors gave a lot of themselves to make this really, really fun and delicious guide. And I hope that you will give yourself this beautiful guide as a holiday gift for Thanksgiving. Let me make sure. Okay. Hold on one second. Okay. Here we go. I have 3 more questions, which is exciting. The first one is from Sue M. And Sue, I love this question because you know that I really love full food utilization and making vegetable stock from scratch. So yes, you can use potato peels to make soup stock. I would suggest if you have a saving bag in your freezer that you would also have some of the aromatics like carrots, celery, and onions, and save the garlic ends, and those potato peels will certainly add not only a beautiful flavor, but a lovely, lovely color as well. So great question, especially during the holidays. Thanks so much, Sue. This is from Peggy B. Hey, Peggy, how are you? I'm glad to be back after a crazy year of selling her house. And she moved to an apartment, and she's rusty with cooking. She needs ideas to jazz up a boring veg bean soup. Her new place has a great kitchen. So maybe you need to sign up for another Ruby class so that you can test out that kitchen, just as a thought. I think that you need to look at profiles of spicing and things like that. I think that might be truly helpful. Cook foods that you like, cook seasonally. And I think that that will be a really good tool for you to have. And take a look at the Plantsgiving guide, because I think it also serves as maybe a refresher course for some people who haven't maybe been cooking for a while. And Cecilia, I am going to send your question to Chef Eric because I think he could probably answer that with a little bit more clarity and understanding than I can. I do make my own silken tofu, and it just kind of works and comes out. But I think Eric is probably the best person to answer that question. So it looks like we've had a great day. It looks like you've brought some great questions. One last thing I just want to reiterate. Plan your Thanksgiving menu and then divide it into blocks. Don't cook everything the day of or whenever. That might be, it'll just be too much stress for you. Just alleviate the stress, enjoy the joy, enjoy whoever you spend the day with, enjoy the bounty. And I think that in our own way, we have so much to be thankful for. So I'm sending loads of love from the city of brotherly love. And I will see you next month. Oh, wait, one last thing. In January, Chef Dan and I are going to do a double event called, I forget the exact name, but we will be doing a live event about how to set up for cooking classes, what things you need to know, what things don't work. So I highly recommend. I'll see you in December, and Dan and I will be on together in January. And I think it's a great way to start off the new year. So thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving, and see you in class. Bye-bye now.